So I have a bunch of basketball thoughts here, a bunch of hoops thoughts for Dana Altman and company. So let's crank them out here to wrap up today's show. So this is going to be a really busy offseason for the Ducks. I mean really busy. If it hasn't already gotten busy by the time you're listening to or watch this show, it's going to in the coming weeks. You're going to hear about visits. I'm going to talk about one in a moment that's scheduled. You're going to hear about potential transfer additions. Guys are flocking into the portal all over the country. There are a lot of options, but Oregon went into the portal, I think found good role players or starters a season ago, and they are going to do that again 100%. And they have to in order to get themselves back into the tournament, because Oregon only brought in one 2025 recruit, and that was J.J. Frakes, a shooting guard who doesn't carry with him a ton of cachet or, a big fancy flashy recruiting profile. I mean, he's 6'5" and he can certainly shoot the basketball, but I mean, overall, don't think he's coming in and starting at shooting guard right away. Maybe a little bit more of a developmental piece. Now, when Oregon's coaching staff kind of got back together when Tony Stubblefield returned, I expected the recruiting to also kind of stabilize and get back to, what it had been before he departed. Now, there were still some great classes. Of course, the one with Shellstad, Evans, and Mookie Cook most notably. And Mookie Cook, by the way, said he expects to come back. He was a defensive specialist, and he was really good at it this past year. His offensive game feels like it's far away. We don't know if he's going to return to the Ducks, but we'll see what that decision is. And again, I'm recording this segment a little bit ahead of time, so maybe we'll know by then, maybe we won't. But Oregon's got Kendra Harrison right now in the class of 2026. Now remember, he's a football player. He's a football player, so he could show up early, I suppose, and be a part of the team. But for next season, not expecting Kendra Harrison to work himself into the fold. Like, even if he enrolled super early as a 2026 recruit, sometimes kids that sign in December get to campus right away. I don't think he's just going to work himself into game shape and into the rotation right away. So Oregon has a lot of portal work to do here, because you were losing TJ Bamba, you were losing Brandon Angel, you're losing Supreme Cook, Keyshawn Bartholomew, and Raheem Moss, who, Moss and Cook had their roles kind of fade as the year went on. Dana Altman tightened the rotations a bit. That's what most coaches do as you get to tournament time. But those five guys combined for 35 points and 14 rebounds a game. You got to replace it somewhere. You got to find it. I don't know where you're looking, but certainly they're going to go into the portal. I'd expect at least 3 portal additions at some point, at least, to replace that crop of guys. Now, maybe Jamari Phillips is able to fill the Keyshawn Bartholomew role before he settled into being a starter. Maybe he settles in and he's a starter next year. He barely played this past year, but Phillips can be a tough shot maker, which is what Keyshawn Bartholomew was, instant offense, and I think Phillips can be that sort of guy, but he is wildly unproven just because he was, down the depth chart this year on a really deep and talented Oregon team. So one guy to know about is Paul Mbiya. Mbiya? I don't know. He's I don't know what the proper pronunciation is. It's spelled Mbya, and he's giving me N'Faly Dante vibes here. So Mbiya, we'll just call him Paul. Paul is currently playing over in the EuroLeague. He plays in a French division that's one of the higher divisions in the country, and the team owner of the team he's playing for is this guy named Tony Parker. You might have heard of him. He won a few NBA rings with like the Spurs or something. I don't know. But before that, he was at the NBA Academy in Africa. You see the similarities here. He's originally from Congo, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, that is. He has a 7'4" wingspan. He's raw. He's athletic. He's new to basketball. He is 6'10", 260 pounds. Who does this remind you of? Screams Dante to me. That's all. I'm not assuring he's going to be N'Faly Dante, who's one of the most physically imposing big men that Oregon has had in my lifetime. But 6'10", 260, that's not nothing. Now, the competition level over in Europe in some ways is comparable to what you have for American college basketball. In some ways, it's actually a step down. In some ways, it kind of depends on where you're playing, because there are different levels to leagues, and teams get promoted and relegated. But there are guys playing over in Europe professionally that were just kind of solid mid-major college players. I actually have a friend of mine who has played over in Spain for many years. He played at St. Mary's. He's a good player at St. Mary's, really good shooter. He's played in Spain for like 7 years or so, 6. I've lost track at this point. He's coming up on a decade or so of playing over there, and he was a good mid-major player for the Gales. Not someone that's tearing it up for Duke or North Carolina or anything like that, but he's been able to carve out a really, really successful professional career. I bring that up to say that the level of play you're dealing with, it can really fluctuate. It can really depend. Still, traits are traits, which is mostly what you're looking at with high school recruits anyway. And 6'10", 260, there are a lot of schools that are looking at him. Texas Tech, my alma mater, Santa Clara, is interested. There are others as well. But a while back, he either had a visit scheduled to Oregon, or that might have already taken place. I wasn't able to find anything to confirm that, but this is someone that Oregon is considering as the important information. And he had a game a while back in the France U21 League. 28 points, 13 rebounds, and 6 blocks. Not bad. Not bad. Now, what would be curious, what I'm curious to see if he winds up picking the Ducks, what's his timeline for being an impact guy? And also what's happening with Nate Biddle. Because if Biddle comes back, that's your starting center, no questions about it. If he could be the backup for a year and then start next season, that would be a timeline I'd feel a lot more comfortable with, I think, given that he's still a little bit newer to the game. Obviously capable of producing in some way, but you're going to face a lot higher skill level and guys that are also really physical, that are 6'10" with 7-foot plus wingspans and such, when you come and play in the Big Ten and go against teams from other conferences. So curious to see what happens there. That's a name to keep an eye on. I'm not aware of any right now that are being tied to Oregon, but these are going to start to pop up. These are going to start to pop up, because you can't just, go with what you have on your roster when 2 of them were 4 of them actually were transfers, 3 of whom were actually, impactful throughout the course of the entire year. 35 points and 14 rebounds a game. That's what Oregon has to go find, either from the bench or from the portal. So I'll leave you with this kind of doom and gloom thought, but I couldn't get it out of my head. Remember when the NCAA said, hey, N'Faly Dante, do you want to come back to Oregon? Yeah, that's too bad. Go to the NBA. And he's made his way up with the Rockets. At least he did a while back, which I think is great to see. But if he'd been granted another year, which he should have been, does Awaka push around N'Faly Dante like he did Nate Biddle? Nope. You don't push around Dante like that. And does Dante score as easily as Nate Biddle does? Nope. So it might be a different game in a couple ways, but I saw Dante score a lot in the previous year in Oregon's NCAA tournament run, and I unfortunately had that thought, like, man, Dante's there, Oregon probably wins that game, which stinks. It's always what if with Oregon. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride. That's kind of the rule here for Duck fans. But and in Paul, just keep an eye on Paul Mbiya. I don't know what the proper pronunciation is. I hope that we start to figure it out, because next N'Faly Dante, I'd be here for it. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.